Broken cowboys are worth saving, said the Navajo healer after he crawled to her door wounded. The arrowhead was still in me when I found her door. Not all the way in. Tip deep in the meat just below my left shoulder, snapped off at the shaft when my horse threw me, which tells you the kind of night it had been. I'd ridden 3 hours after that with the heel of my hand pressed against it, the blood going tacky, then stiff in the cold. And when Rooster finally quit on me, not threw me, just stopped, locked up, done, I walked. Half a mile maybe less. I was counting wrong by then. The light I saw was low. A single oil lamp behind hide stretched over a window frame, that pale amber glow. I have thought about that light since, the way you think about a thing you nearly missed. If she'd banked it an hour earlier, I'd have walked right past and been dead in a wash by morning with no one to find me until the thaw. I didn't knock. That's the honest account. I got my fist up to the door, and then I was on my knees. And then I was not on my knees. I was on my face, and the door was opening from the inside, because she'd heard me go down. The first thing I remember after that is the smell of burning sage, and something else, something green and bitter I couldn't name. The fire was close. I was on my back on a blanket that was thick and rough-woven and warm, and there was a woman kneeling over me with a lamp held out, looking at my shoulder the way a man looks at a broke fence, not panicked, just measuring the work. She was Navajo. 40, maybe a few years either side. Hair pulled back. Hands that moved without hurry. She said something I didn't understand, low and even. And when I didn't answer, she switched without a pause. "Don't move that arm," I said. I wasn't planning to. She looked at my face then. Just once, a quick inventory. Then back to the wound. "The point is still in. I know it. I'm going to take it out." I said, "All right." She didn't ask me if I was sure. Didn't explain what she was going to do or how much it was going to hurt or any of that. She just went to work. I can tell you it hurt plenty. I can tell you I made no sound I'm proud of. She packed the hole with something dried plant matter, I found out later. A poultice she'd already prepared for something else, and she wrapped it tight and clean. And when she was done, she wiped her hands on a piece of cloth and looked at me again with that same steady measurement. "You'll keep the arm," she said. "Good. If you don't tear it open again." "I'll try not to." She nodded once. That was the end of that part of the conversation. My name is Caleb Doss. I was 51 years old that winter, though I had been feeling older for a while. I'd spent the better part of 30 years moving cattle, fixing other men's fences, pulling other men's calves, and somewhere in all that, I had accumulated a particular kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. The kind where you wake up in the morning, and the first thing you think is how long until you can stop for the day. I'd left the last outfit I worked, Pembroke's, down in the San Juan Basin, after a disagreement that was at heart simple. Pembroke thought I was old. He didn't say it that way. He said it as efficiency, as cost, as the work requiring a younger man's pace. I had nothing left to argue with because the truth is I was tired and he knew it and I knew it, and the only way to keep my dignity was to leave before he put it any plainer. I had a horse and a bedroll and $4 and some change, and I was headed nowhere specific. North, I thought. Utah. Maybe. I had a name I'd been given once, a man in Moab, who sometimes hired on older hands for winter watch. Light work. Fence line and feed. I was headed there with no particular hurry when the trouble found me, which is the way trouble usually goes. You aren't looking for it, and there it is. 3 men. I'd stopped at a creek to water Rooster, and they came down a draw, like they'd been waiting, which maybe they had. They wanted the horse and whatever was in the saddlebags, which was not much, but they weren't the type to take your word for it. I got a shot off before the first one was on me. Missed. He didn't. The arrow was from a short bow, the kind you can draw from horseback, and it hit me high, and I spun, and Rooster lost his mind, and the other 2 thought better of it, and they all went north at a run, leaving me spinning in the creek shallows, with a shaft sticking out of my shoulder, and the cold water going, pink around my boots. Later I understood that Rooster running when he did was probably what saved me. They'd have finished it if he hadn't panicked and scattered them. A horse spooking at the wrong moment. And here I am. Her name was Ahiga. She told me this on the second day, in the same flat tone she used for everything practical, unhurried, like information being filed. She had lived alone in that place for 6 years. Her husband had died of a fever. She had 2 grown children, who lived 2 days' ride east with her sister's family. She had stayed because the land was hers, and she knew it, and she was not interested in leaving it. She told me all of this while changing my dressing. Not warmly, exactly, factually. Like she had decided I was someone who could be trusted with facts. I told her my situation in the same way. The outfit I'd left. The men, where I'd been headed. She listened, and didn't offer opinions on any of it. "You'll be here at least 2 weeks," she said. "The arm needs to stay still. I don't want to be a burden." She gave me a look that wasn't quite irritation. Closer to patience being exercised. "You are not a burden. You are a man who needs to heal. Those are different things." I didn't have an answer for that. The first week I slept a great deal. Fever came and went. She had a routine morning and evening. She checked the wound, changed the packing, gave me things to drink that tasted like the earth smelled after rain. I asked her once what was in them. She said the names in Navajo, and then looked at me. "Does it matter?" "I suppose not." "Then drink it." I drank it. Between the sleeping and the fever there were hours awake, where I lay and watched the inside of that place, and felt the shape of what my life had become. It was not comfortable thinking. A man past 50 with no land, no family living, no outfit that wanted him, riding north toward a maybe. That is not a list that flatters a man. I had done my share of work in this world, had done it well, I thought, or tried to, but I could not put my hand on a single thing that would outlast me. No son who carried my name. No acres with my sweat in the soil. No woman who would grieve me past the polite. I didn't talk about any of this. A man doesn't. But I lay there with it in the firelight, and it was not a good companion. On the 4th or 5th day, I was awake when she came in from outside, cold air coming in around her, and she stopped and looked at me for a moment. "You're thinking too hard," she said. "Can't help it." "Yes, you can." She hung her coat on the peg. "Think about something you can do something about. Can't do much with one arm. Then think about nothing." She turned and looked at me over her shoulder. "That's harder. But it's better for you." Her days were full. She had a small garden under canvas that she tended even in the cold, seedlings for the spring planting. She had 3 goats and a dog, the dog very old and moving slow. She collected and dried plants. She made things rope, baskets, medicines. She had a small trade with a settlement 7 miles south, a few Navajo families and a couple of white homesteaders who knew her and came when someone needed something doctored. Twice that first week men came to the door while I was there. Once a boy, maybe 12, with a cut on his arm that had gone wrong. Once an older man, Navajo, walking slow, something with his gut. She took them both in, worked on them quietly, sent them off with packets of dried things and instructions given clearly and without fuss. Neither of them seemed surprised to find a white man lying on her floor. They looked at me the way you look at furniture, noted. Not particularly interesting. I watched her work. There is a specific quality some people have where the thing they do and the person they are seem like the same thing entirely. She had that. Her hands moving over the boy's cut arm, the way she held it not gentled into something smaller than it was, just handled. The boy winced, and she said something in Navajo, and he breathed out, and was still. I don't know what she said, but something in the tone of it. By the end of the first week I could sit up without the room moving. I started doing what I could with one arm, small things. Things that didn't need 2 hands. Fed the goats. Carried water. Split kindling one-handed, which takes longer but can be done. She watched me do these things without comment, which I took as approval. One evening I was splitting the last of the kindling when she came out and watched for a moment. "You don't have to do that." "I know." She was quiet a beat. Then, "Thank you." That was all. But the way she said it, not reflexive courtesy, just a plain fact acknowledged, sat with me in a way I hadn't expected. The second week I could use the arm, carefully. The 3 men who jumped me were on my mind again now that I had room for thinking beyond the pain. Ahiga had heard of men like them in the area, a loose group, not organized, just bad men moving together for convenience. She said they had been a problem as far north as the river. Had killed a family the past autumn, which I had not known. They'll come back, I said. For the horse. If nothing else. Probably. You're not worried? She considered this. I am careful. There is a difference. She showed me what she meant. The place had things I hadn't noticed a second way out through a panel behind the stacked wood. A rifle I had not seen, kept wrapped in oilcloth. She knew where to be in the event of it, where the angles were bad for anyone coming in from the south. She had thought about it the way you think about a thing that might come, and probably won't, but might. You've been alone out here a long time, I said. Yes. Doesn't frighten you? She thought about that longer than I expected. It did, she said. The first winter. I was afraid every night. Then I learned the land. And after that, she paused. Afraid of what you know is different from afraid of what you don't. I chewed on that. Most men I've known, I said. They'd tell a woman alone in a place like this to go somewhere else, somewhere safer. She looked at me with something close to amusement. Not quite. What would you tell me? I thought about it honestly. Nothing, I said. I'd keep my mouth shut. She did smile then. Small. Gone quick. But there. On the 11th day, I found the dog dead near the woodpile. He had gone quietly in the night, curled up the way old dogs do, and he was already cold and stiff when I found him. I didn't know what to do with that information. I stood there for a moment, and then I went in and told her. She was still. Not crying, I do not want to make it seem like that. Just still. She had owned that dog a long time. You could see her computing it, what it meant, the size of the absence. She went outside and looked at him for a while. Then she said, "Will you help me bury him?" Of course. We buried him out past the garden, in the direction that caught the afternoon light. She said something over him in Navajo. I stood with my hat off, and my bad arm held careful, and the cold coming down out of the north, and I didn't understand the words, but the shape of them was plain enough. Gratitude, acknowledgement, the particular sadness of saying goodbye to something that asked for so little, and gave so much. When she was done, she stood there another minute. Then she turned and walked back to the house, and I followed her. And that was all, and it was the right amount. Rooster had made his own way to her corral at some point during my first days there. I hadn't been in a condition to wonder about him. He'd found her small water barrel and stayed. She'd been feeding him without comment, which I didn't know until I went out to check on him and found fresh hay. "You've been feeding my horse," I said. "Of course. You didn't tell me. You were busy being feverish." I stood with that a moment. "I owe you," I said. "More than I can pay." She was by the fire, working on something. She didn't look up. "You owe me nothing. You would have died out there." "That's exactly what I mean." Now she looked up. "Caleb." She said my name plainly. It was the first time she'd used it. "I did not save you because I wanted a debt. I saved you because you were a man who needed saving, and I had the means. That's the whole of it." I stood there. I didn't know what to do with a plain thing, said plainly. "All right," I said finally. "All right," she said, and went back to what she was doing. On the 14th day, I told her I thought I should be moving on. I had been thinking about it for 2 days, working up to it, and when I said it, I expected her to agree to say yes. The arm is good enough now. The road is clear. Take care of yourself. That is what a person says when a stranger's time in their home has come to its end. She did not say that. She was at the table. She set down what was in her hands and she looked at me with that steady, measuring look, the same one she'd given my shoulder on the first night, and she was quiet for a while. "Where will you go?" she said. "North. Moab, maybe. I told you." "To do what?" "Winter work. Fence line." She looked at me. Not unkindly. Just level. "For a man who hired you because he has no better option." That landed. Not cruelly. Accurately. "It's work," I said. "Yes." A pause. "It's also what a man does when he has decided he is used up." The fire cracked. Outside, the wind was up, pushing at the hide-covered window. I said, "I don't know what you mean by that." "I think you do." I stood there. The truth was, I did know. The truth was, I had been riding north in that direction, not because it was a good direction, but because it was the only door I could see. Pembroke had told me I was old, and I had believed him. The arrow had told me I was careless, and I'd believed that too. And somewhere in the believing I had narrowed down to this. A careful ride towards someone who needed labor. He couldn't get otherwise. And then what? And then what, after that? This land is mine, she said. But there is more of it than I can tend alone. The garden. The animals. The building there is building to do in the spring. She paused. I am not asking you to stay out of pity. I am telling you that you are capable, and I have need of what you are capable of. And I am asking you to consider whether you want to stay. Consider it. Yes. Consider it. I am not asking you to decide right now. I looked at the fire. What you're describing, I said. That's not a small thing. No, she said. It is not. Two people who barely know each other. 3 weeks, she said. I know some things. And then, quietly, I know you are a man who splits wood one-handed and doesn't mention it. I know you buried my dog with your hat off and stood there like it mattered. I know you are capable, and I know you are honest, and I know that you are tired in a way that has nothing to do with your shoulder. She stopped. Then, plain as anything, I know that you are worth more than fence line work in Moab. I could not look at her for a moment. That is the truth of it. A woman said a true thing to me, and I could not look at her because it had been so long since anyone said a true thing like that, a thing that went against the story I had been carrying about myself. And it hit somewhere so far down that all I could do was stand very still and look at the fire. I don't know what I'd be to you, I said. I don't either, she said. Not exactly. But I know you would be useful. And I know I would be glad of you. I looked at her then. She was watching me with those steady, dark eyes. No performance in it. No plea. Just a woman who had thought about something and said it. Let me sleep on it, I said. Of course, I did not sleep on it. I lay there in the dark, and I went through the thing from every direction. I thought about pride, which had sent me north in the first place. Pembroke's voice in my head telling me the work required a younger man. I thought about the years I had spent being useful and unnoticed. I thought about the last time a person had looked at me the way she looked at me, which was a long time ago, longer than I wanted to count. And I thought about that pale amber light in the window, the one I'd almost walked past. A man makes his life out of what he does when the door is open. I had walked through enough closed doors. I had talked myself out of enough open ones. By morning I had not slept, and I knew what I was going to say. I found her outside with the goats. She knew I could see that, but she was patient, and she waited. I'll stay, I said. If the offer stands. It stands. I nodded. She went back to what she was doing. I went to fetch the water. That was 3 years ago this past February. I built the 3rd room that spring. Took me 6 weeks, and it is not a beautiful room, but it is square and solid, and it does not leak. In the fall she showed me which plants to collect and how to dry them right. And now I know most of them, though I am still learning the ones that look like each other. The garden is twice what it was. We lost one of the goats to something in the summer, but we have 2 kids that have grown up strong. The men who jumped me, 2 of them were taken by the law the following spring. A territory marshal who came through on different business and knew the description. The 3rd one I never heard about. I stopped thinking about him after a while. People in the settlement 7 miles south know me now. They know I am the man who lives on Ahiga's land and works it with her. And if there is talk about that, I don't hear it. And if I heard it, I would not much care. They come to her when they need to be doctored, and they nod to me, and that is the extent of it, and it is enough. I am 54 years old, and I am not tired the way I was. Last spring I was out at the far edge of the garden, putting in the first posts for the new fence line we'd talked about. And she came out with water, and she stood there a minute watching me work. I looked up at her. She was in the afternoon light. The high plateau spread out behind her, and she had that particular look she gets, sometimes settled, certain, the look of someone who is exactly where they mean to be. She handed me the water. Good line, she said, looking at the posts. Takes time to get it right, I said. Yes, she said. And then she put her hand against my face for a moment. Not long, just a moment. The way you touch something you are glad is there. And she walked back to the house. I stood there with the water and the fence line half done, and the afternoon light going long across the land. Worth saving, she'd said. Back at the beginning, when I was still burning with fever and not sure I was going to make it, she had said it quiet, and even while she changed my dressing, more to herself than to me, maybe. Broken cowboys are worth saving. I have turned that over a good many times since. I think what she meant was not that a man had to earn saving. She didn't mean it as a verdict you pass on a man before you help him. She meant it the way she means most things, as a plain fact, stated because it is true. A man down is worth the work of pulling up. Especially one who, once he's up, will do something with himself. I don't know if I've done something with myself. That's not for me to say. But I know I am here, and I am useful. And there is a woman who knows my worth and has chosen to be beside me, and she chose it plain and clear with her eyes open. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the whole thing.